Hi guys, it's Marilyn. Stay tuned to watch a video about a game-changing technique for cutting finicky materials with your Cricut. On today's video, I want to do an experiment with this Heat N Bond Ultrahold, iron it on some fabric, some leather, some cork, and then cut it with my Cricut Maker and see how this affects the fabric. You know, sometimes you get leathers that are just very thin and you wish they had more structure, or they get a lot of fuzzy things on your mat, or maybe you have some fabric or cork that's very thin. And so I just wanted to experiment to see if the Heat N Bond would, number one, give it enough structure that the thing that you make with your leather hangs better, and two, to see if it helps protect your mat, and then third, just to see if it helps your final product look better with less frays and things like that. So I already adhered some of the Heat N Bond to several things here. Now I had a viewer who mentioned or suggested using freezer paper. So I have freezer paper on the back of denim, a textured leather, and then a thin leather. And when I opened my drawer in my craft room to get my freezer paper out, I saw my old Heat N Bond, which I've had laying around for quite some time. And I decided, let me go ahead and try that too. So on all of these things, this is a faux leather from Hobby Lobby. This faux leather is plenty thick to cut, but sometimes because of the fabric on the back, it doesn't always cut the nicest. You see some things hanging off the edge. This is the same leather that I put some of the freezer paper on. I just wanted to be able to compare. That's a textured leather. Then I have some denim, and if you watched an old video where I made some DIY fabric stiffener, that's another way to be able to work with these materials. But this Heat N Bond would be a whole lot faster if it works. This is a piece of leather, and it's the same leather that I'm trying the freezer paper on, so I wanted to compare those. And then I have two pieces of cork. Now this top piece, it is a regular, I don't know, the back of it even feels like pressed cork. Maybe it's bonded to something, but it has a smooth back. It cuts very nicely without the Heat N Bond, but it is a little bit thin. So I wanted to see if that would beef that up to make the structure better. And then this cork is some cork fabric that I got at Hobby Lobby. It is super affordable and it cuts very well, but the back of it is a fabric, and so you get some of those same frays from this that you do faux leather or fabrics. Now I'm missing one. Okay, where is it? Where did I hide it? I put them under things to let them cool off so that they'll stay as flat as possible. Let me see if I can find it. If not, okay, I found it sandwiched between these two things. I had already done all of these pieces, and I'd put the freezer paper on these several days ago. But today, I thought that I would also put it on this faux suede. This is another product that you get from Hobby Lobby. And when I bought it, I had no idea really what I was getting into. And that is just a flimsy little piece of fabric. That's all that is. It's not faux leather. It's not the nice faux leather that you see people cutting on Pinterest or YouTube. It's just a super thin fabric. So I put some on the back of it. And then what I'm doing with all the rest of these is I'm removing the backing from half of it so that I can compare the cuts for you to see, does it work better with the paper adhered to it and take it off after the cut, or does it work better to remove the paper first? Okay, so we're going to do that one as well. I know usually I like to show you a lot of the computer things that go along with this and attaching everything to the mat. This would be probably a way too long video if I do all of that on camera. I want you to see whether I put it face up or face down, what blade I'm using, and what the result is on if there was any benefit of using the Heat N Bond. So I hope you'll stick around and see what happens. I started making some fabric earrings recently, and I have another video out there where I used just an inexpensive DIY fabric stiffener that I painted 2 coats on the back of fabric, and I want to show you. Hopefully this today will have the same effect, because again, it will be super fast if it does, much faster than painting on 2 coats of the stiffener and waiting for that. Now, these are just some old denim jeans of my husband's. And I cut these without anything. This is just the fabric. The cut was really nice until I went to remove them from my mat. And removing them from my mat made all those frays pop out of the fabric. And it did not look like that when I was done with the cut. It was very smooth. But that's what happened. So I set off on a journey to figure out how to rectify that. So I made my DIY fabric stiffener, and here's some pieces to earrings that I cut out. This has the fabric stiffener in it, or on it, and you can see those cut out very, very smoothly. And when you removed it from the mat, the fibers are held together with that fabric stiffener, and so it didn't fray out. So that is the goal that I'm going for today. With that being said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try it on the denim. Now, notice I have half of it without the cover and half of it with that paper cover on it. Now with fabric, I cut this with my rotary blade, and I cut it with the face side up. I believe they say to do it with the face side down, but I have had better luck with the face side up. So here's the rotary blade. Now, if you don't have a Cricut maker and you don't have access to the rotary blade, don't go anywhere, because the next things I am going to do don't require the maker. So for the first cut, I used the heavy fabrics like denim, it says like denim in parentheses, setting. And because there is an entire layer of Heat N Bond under it, and half of it has paper, I added more pressure. So instead of staying with default, I added more. If you watched that prior video, you saw that when I used the rotary blade on fabric, it never did meet up exactly where the blade started and where it ended. And so I had to, hey, what happened to my paper? Oh, there it is. Okay, it's still on my mat. Scared me. I thought it was stuck in my machine somewhere. Okay, so if you saw the prior video, you saw that they didn't cut out at the very bottom where the blade started and stopped. So you do have to snip them off. Okay, I have no idea which one of these was on its paper backing and which one didn't have the paper backing on it, but it doesn't matter because they both cut beautifully. Let me get something that's not white, because white can really glare in the camera. Okay, brown's not the prettiest color, but it's neutral, and I think that's going to work out well. So here is the cut. And I'm getting really close so that you can see exactly how it worked out. Let me turn them over. And the back ends up being kind of shiny. And really this Heat N Bond feels a little bit like a rubbery coat. I don't know really what it is, but it feels rubbery. Here was the denim without anything on it, and it just kind of folds over, you know, when you pick it up. Like the DIY concoction that I came up with, this Heat N Bond gives a lot of structure, and they're going to hang nicely. So I am super happy with that cut. Now let's go to the faux leather. For this cut, I'm going to put it face down. Now this cut's going to use the fine point blade. So clean it off, put that in. Now I'm resetting my material to shimmer leather. It cut each of these earrings 3 times. This is the side with the paper backing on it still. This is the side without the paper backing. Okay, paper backing. Oops, we'll put that on the right. And no paper backing on the left. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the paper backing. I don't want that to stay on my earrings while I'm wearing them. Ooh, those feel good. Those feel really nice. Okay, so let me show you that up close and personal. This was the side with the paper backing. This was no paper backing. Let me go ahead and turn those over. Let me look at that. Okay, there's not a huge difference, and it could just be a little fluke, but the one without the paper backing has just a little bit of fuzz here. I mean, just a tiny amount of fuzz there. Yeah, I think you can see that in the camera. So, another wonderful cut. Okay, I'm going to do my 2 corks at the same time. There's the other cork. One is the cork fabric I bought at Hobby Lobby. Again, super affordable, but does leave some frays because the backing on it's bonded to some fabric. Now for my corks, I've always used the faux leather paper thin setting, and so that's what I'm going to continue using today. I did add more pressure just like I've done in the prior 2 cuts. Okay, so that setting did not work any longer. Not quite. It almost did. Let's see if it worked on the fabric, the cork fabric. No. Darn it. Okay. So I'm going to have to change what setting I used for my cork. I'll probably just go to the shimmer leather like I used on the prior cut. But let me go ahead and show you what I have so far. You can still see where the cut happened, that it did an excellent job. But before I move on, I'm going to prepare more of this so that you can see it really does work. Okay, let me see if I can cut those the rest of the way. Actually, that's hilarious. It came off just by pulling it. It had enough. It was cut most of the way through. Where's the other piece of that one? What'd I do with? Oh, no, that's not it. Where'd it go? Here it is. Okay, so this was the one without the paper coating on the back. Here's the one with the paper coating on the back. I'm just going to pull this and see what happens. Okay, because it was a little thicker and the cut didn't make it quite as deep, it didn't fare quite as well as the last one on that last little bit. So here's the one without the paper backing on it. And you can see that despite it didn't go quite all the way through, it's a very nice cut. And then where the cut occurred with the paper on the back, that's also a nice cut. This little jagged here is where I had to cut it with scissors. Let me take this backing off. Okay, so note to self, use the shimmer leather setting instead. Those still look nice, but you don't spend that much money on a machine for it not to cut them all the way through. And that was my fault. I love my Cricut. I'm not blaming the Cricut whatsoever. I'm just saying sometimes it's a little trial and error until you figure out what you need to do. Okay, so I'm just pulling this out as well. And I don't think I should do that because I can see where it pulled up a little bit of the cork on the front. But for purposes of this video, that's okay. Where I had to cut it was right here. Where the Cricut cut it with the Heat N Bond is everywhere else, and it's beautiful. There's the back side. Okay, I'm just going to redo this because I want you to see the true effect. So I'll set those aside. I'm going to pause my work, although you won't be paused when you're watching it, so that I can prepare some more cork fabric because you do have to let it cool down. So give me just a minute. Okay, so here is what we'll use after a while that really needs to cool down. Okay, so I'm going to go back to some leather. Now, I think I showed you the leather already, but here it is. Here it is on the mat. And I use genuine leather setting and more pressure. And I know when I was looking on Amazon today for the deep point or the deep cut blade, I've seen them called both, that on Amazon it showed that these were for the Explore. And people had asked, can I use them on the Maker also? And they said yes. And so this is something you should be able to cut on the Explore or the Maker. If any of you have cut things like this on your Explore, let us know in the comments and let us know which Explore machine you have and whether you had success. Okay, so that cut each earring twice. I've cut this leather before on my Maker and it cut nicely, but it was pretty thin. I made some earrings out of it and I wasn't happy with how they weren't very strong or stiff. They just didn't hang very nicely. And so I went back, I took them apart and I added some of the glue and water mixture to the back. But I'm telling you, this method here is awesome. If you don't want to spend the money on the Heat N Bond, by all means, do the DIY thing. But wow, I really like this. Okay, here it is with the paper on the back. Here it is without. And I actually like how it finishes off the back of your earrings. I think that's a nice touch. Let me remove this piece of paper. Okay, so do you see any difference in the cut between having the paper on it and not having the paper on it? I really don't. Okay, so on to the next one. Hey, so we are having some wonderful luck. I really like it when things go well. So the last piece of leather I have is some leather I got at Springfield Leather Company. Okay, for this leather I went with genuine leather again and used the more setting instead of the default setting for the amount of pressure. Now this cut doesn't look nearly as pretty. Okay, so I want you to see this. The side that had the paper backing on it still, well, there's a little bit of fraying there, but the back of it finished off more nicely than the one that didn't have the paper on it. And the paper did get bunched up a little bit. Let's look at the front. So this had the paper, and this did not have the paper. I'm going to put these back under the easy press and see what that does. So here's the before shot. Okay, it slid out. I have not even looked at this yet. I want you to see exactly what I see. I don't want to be one of those YouTubers that, oh, everything looks great, and then you try it and it doesn't work. Okay, so I did put parchment paper under the, well, I put it around both sides to keep my mat and my Teflon sheet clean. Okay. Oh, I think something from the Teflon sheet. That's very interesting. So something from the Teflon sheet took away most of the sheen that was on the back of that earring from the Heat N Bond. Okay, this was the messier cut. Okay, let's get rid of this. So it smoothed it down a little bit, but this leather really cut better without the Heat N Bond. I was just hoping it would help with the frays, but it really didn't. Yeah, I don't think I would mess with adding Heat N Bond to the back of a fuzzy leather. The back of this was fairly fuzzy. Now the back of this leather that I used, well, you can't see it, wasn't fuzzy. It was a thinner, more smooth leather on the back, but the back of these was fuzzy. So this is not the method you want to use for fuzzy leather. So the last, I think it's the last fabric that I have, or the last material that I have, is this super flimsy faux suede that I got at Hobby Lobby. So we're going to try that. Now that's going to use the rotary blade again, so I apologize to those of you that don't have a rotary blade. Now for this fabric, I used medium fabrics like cotton. It's really super thin, but once you add this to it, it's as thick as cotton. And then I'm going to click on the more pressure again. I fully expect that I'm still going to have to snip at the bottom of my earrings because that's been happening when I use fabric. Okay, so it is attached at the base of it, so I don't want to just pull on that because it can make some frayed edges where the fabric pulls. So I'm going to lift it up and be real gentle with it. Okay, so Now you can see that it's just barely attached. That's all you're doing is snipping that little piece there, and same thing on this side. Here's the cut. Let me turn them over. Go ahead and remove this paper so you can see what it was left like. Okay, so there you go. Couple of nice smooth cuts on this fabric. Now this fabric, it stands up a little bit better. It gives it a little structure. It's still not really thick at all, but it does give it a little structure, and the cut is super smooth. And then you saw the back. It's just a little bit shiny and again has a slightly rubbery feel. So here's the final analysis. This Heat N Bond is wonderful. It makes the cut so crisp, and then when you pull it off your mat, it's still crisp. Oh, I still have that one cork to go. I'm just going to leave the paper backing on the whole thing because I feel like that worked best. Oh, so much better. Okay, my brown cardstock is full, so let me just show you really closely on this mat. Beautiful. And this is that inexpensive leather. I'm sorry, this is that inexpensive cork fabric from Hobby Lobby. So this is a game changer. No more having to paint on 2 layers of glue and water. That's beautiful. Okay, so we're going to replace the ones that didn't work too well with these. But I do want to remind you on what they look like. It's kind of hard to see brown on brown though, so let me put them on this. Okay, so again, it's beautiful on fabric. Another fabric, even though it says faux suede, it's really just a thin fabric. Worked wonderfully on the faux leather. It was gorgeous on the 2 corks, and very, very nice to add some structure to this thin leather. And this thin leather, like I said, it had a fairly smooth back. It didn't have long fibers hanging off of it. The one fail was this brown leather, and it was much more of a fuzzy leather. So we're taking that off because it didn't work. But we're going to look at the beautiful results of what did work. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section. If you like my video, found anything in it helpful or inspiring, please give me a thumbs up. I truly appreciate those. And if you'd like to see what I'll be working on in the future, hit the subscribe button. Then if you tap the bell, YouTube should notify you when I upload new content. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Marilyn. Bye-bye.